Hi there, I'm Marla. My parents gave me a birthday trip for turning 18, but when I came home, the locks were changed. No goodbye, no warning, just trash bags on the porch, and a letter that said, "You'll figure it out." But that wasn't even the worst part. They told the whole family I chose to leave. While they erased me from their lives, their will, and even their memories, now they want to be in my son's life after pretending I never existed? What kind of family does that? I'm not usually the kind of woman who remembers exact dates, except one. May 11th, 2007. That was the weekend my life split in half. So clean and so cruel, you could draw a straight line through who I was before and who I became after. Back then, I had just turned 18. I was still naive enough to believe my parents loved me in the way parents are supposed to. I thought the world, my world, was solid. Clyde and Lorene Denovan were never affectionate in public, but that weekend they surprised me with a smile. Something warm, rare, almost unsettling. "We got you something special," Mom said, setting down a brown leather envelope on the kitchen counter. "All expenses paid? Sedona, just for the weekend. You deserve it, Marla." I blinked, confused. "You're serious?" "Of course," she said. "You're growing up. This is your time." Dad clapped me on the back like I was a coworker who'd just made quota. "You'll love it up there. Clean air, red rocks, peace and quiet." I should have known something was off by how rehearsed it all sounded, but I didn't want to ruin it. I was too starved for approval. So I packed my overnight bag, charged my Nokia, and hopped on the shuttle they'd already arranged. Sedona was beautiful, silent in that red desert way that made your thoughts echo louder. I hiked Bell Rock, bought a turquoise bracelet at one of those roadside crystal shops, even wrote a postcard I never got around to mailing. When Sunday rolled around, I took the shuttle back. Tired, sunburned, happy. But the second I saw our street, my stomach turned. The cab driver slowed near our house. No, what used to be our house, and I could barely make out the number on the curb. It was our address, all right. But everything else was wrong. No porch chairs, no welcome mat, no curtains. A bright red for sale sign stabbed the lawn like a knife. I paid the driver with shaking fingers and stepped out. "This can't be right," I whispered. The windows were bare. Through the glass I could see nothing. No furniture, no TV, no photos. Just empty floors and echoing shadows. Like the life I knew had evaporated in 72 hours. I fumbled for my house key, heart jackhammering. The metal scraped in the lock but wouldn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I knocked harder and harder. Nothing. "Mom?" I called out. "Dad?" Still nothing. I turned around and saw Mr. Callahan across the street, leaning on his mailbox like he'd been expecting a show. We locked eyes. He gave me a slight nod but didn't come over, just kept staring like I was a ghost. "Do you know where my parents went?" I asked across the lawn. He shrugged, said something about moving, figured you already knew. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My brain was frozen, my mouth dry. My hands kept opening and closing around the strap of my bag. I sat on the steps and opened the zipper pocket. That's when I found it. An envelope. White. No name. "Just for you," scrawled in Mom's cursive. Too clean, too deliberate. Inside was a note. 7 words, that's all. "Time for you to grow up. You'll manage." No love, Mom. No explanation. No number. No key. Nothing. They were gone. Just like that. At first, I laughed. A dry, pitiful sound that cracked in my throat. This had to be a prank, a test, some twisted way to push me into adulthood. But night fell, and no one showed up. I sat there, hugging my knees, as the streetlights flickered on. My phone was at 12%. I tried Dad's number. Disconnected. Mom's? Straight to voicemail. I only had my bag and a hoodie. So I curled up on the porch, pulling the fabric over my head to block out the streetlight. I didn't cry. I couldn't afford to. Not yet. The cold didn't bother me. Not as much as the silence. Not as much as the realization that they hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me. The sky hadn't even turned blue yet when I stood up, brushing the dirt from my jeans and stretching out legs that hadn't rested, only folded. My arms were sore from hugging myself all night, my neck stiff from resting it against the doorframe like I belonged to no one and nowhere. The street was silent, still asleep. No birds, no traffic. Just that kind of dead quiet that makes you feel like the world forgot to wake up with you. I knocked on Mr. Callahan's door. Twice. No answer. I didn't blame him. I wouldn't have opened the door either for a girl who looked like she'd spent the night surviving her own family. I walked down the street and turned left onto Bicknell Avenue, where the Parkers still had one of those old payphones bolted outside their garage. The receiver smelled like pennies and cigarette ash, but it worked. I didn't know Aunt Berta's number by heart, but I'd written it down once inside my address book, the one my mom said only old ladies use. Guess it came in handy when your parents ghost you. The line rang 4 times, then a click. Hello? It took a second to find my voice. Aunt Berta, it's Marla. Silence, not the soft kind. I'm sorry to call so early, I rushed on, but I need help. I came back yesterday and my house. I swallowed, forcing the words. It's empty. They're gone. They left me. Still nothing. I could hear her breathing. I waited. Let her say something. Anything. Finally, she sighed. Your mom said you knew. Those words hit harder than the cold. I gripped the receiver like it might fall off the wall. Knew what? That they were moving. Clyde told us you were heading off early. Something about a scholarship in Flagstaff or maybe Prescott. I don't remember exactly. I felt my throat tighten. I never applied for anything out of town. I was supposed to start community college here. Well, she said, a little sharper now, they said you were ready to be on your own. Ready? I laughed, a sound too close to sobbing. I had one bag and a bus ticket. No apartment, no key, no notice, just nothing. Berta went quiet again, then said, Look, I don't know what their deal is. I just assumed you were doing what kids do now, leaving early, wanting freedom. I was 18, I said, voice cracking. Yesterday. That landed. There was a long pause before she added, If you want to come here for a bit, I guess that's fine. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Thank you. I don't know where else to... She cut me off. Just don't make it permanent, okay? We don't have space for long-term arrangements. And just like that, the hollow in my chest grew wider. But I said, okay, just a few nights. I took the city bus. Flagstaff wasn't huge, but the ride felt endless. I sat by the window, clutching my overnight bag like it was still filled with promises. Aunt Berta lived on the east side, near the dry cleaners where she worked part-time. She opened the door in a bathrobe and curlers, her face lined not just from age, but from someone who'd stopped pretending to care too many years ago. You can use the guest room, she said, stepping aside. No smoking, no loud music, and don't expect rides. The room smelled like dust and mothballs. The sheets were stiff. I didn't care. I showered, ate a piece of toast, tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop hearing her voice on the phone. They said you knew. They lied. Again, and people believed them. Later that afternoon, I walked past the kitchen and overheard Berta on her cordless. Yes, she showed up. No, not a word beforehand. I thought you told her. I told her she can stay for now. Lorene, don't worry. I won't encourage her. That last part, it cut clean. I stood in the hallway, every cell in my body tightening. Don't encourage her. Not how is she, not is she okay. Just don't encourage her. Like I was a virus that might spread if not contained. That night, I stared at the ceiling fan as it turned lazily above me. The shadows stretched across the walls like claws reaching backward through time. I remembered being 7, sitting under the kitchen table during one of Mom's book club nights. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was just coloring. But I heard her. She's fine, Lorene had said. I mean, we prayed for a boy, but what can you do? There was a laugh, not the kind that made you feel safe. Aunt Kay had responded, Well, she's quiet. Maybe that's a blessing. Even at 7, I knew what that meant. I remembered Christmas that same year. Leo, my cousin, got a new bike and a full drum set. I got socks and a puzzle missing 2 pieces. They said it was because he had potential. I was sweet, like that was enough. Now I could see it for what it was. I'd been unwanted since the beginning. Not for something I did, but for what I wasn't. And the truth sat with me like a weight I couldn't shake. The next morning, I asked Aunt Berta if she'd heard anything else from Lorene. She didn't even look up from her coffee. She said don't call her. Said you'd figure it out. I nodded. Quiet, mechanical, but inside something hardened. They didn't just leave, they erased me, and the people around them helped paint me invisible. That night, staring at the ceiling, I stopped thinking of them as my parents. A week after I stopped calling them my parents, Aunt Berta slid a folded paper across the table during breakfast. Her nail tapped it once, then she returned to her bowl of oatmeal like it wasn't a grenade. It was a job listing, a dishwasher position in Tempe, part-time, cash tips. Folded inside was a one-way bus ticket. No note, no explanation. That morning, she didn't say, "You have to leave." She didn't have to. I got the message. I left the next day without a goodbye. Tempe was a different world. Louder, warmer, and full of strangers who didn't care where I'd come from or where I was going. I stayed on a couch in a dingy apartment near the ASU campus with a girl I used to know in high school, Shira. She smoked cloves and talked about transferring to a better school in California. Her boyfriend slept over most nights and clearly hated that I was there. After a week, she stopped answering my texts. After 2, I was sleeping in the break room of the diner where I washed dishes 6 nights a week. It was the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and regret. Old vinyl booths, broken jukebox in the corner, fry cook named Larry who called everyone champ. The manager let me stay on a cot in the back for a few days, until corporate found out and said it was a liability issue. Then I moved to the back seat of my car. It wasn't a glamorous breakdown. There was no montage music or cathartic sobbing into the windshield, just exhaustion, just trash bags with my clothes in them, a pair of fast food shoes under the seat, and a scratchy blanket that barely covered my legs. Some nights I parked at the Walmart off McClintock. It was open 24/7, and I could slip in, pretend I was shopping, splash cold water on my face in the bathroom. I used to count the number of hours I hadn't spoken to anyone. I stopped after I hit 3 days. One Tuesday, after my shift, I went to the local aid center. A social worker named Diane, late 40s, tight curly hair and glasses with a leopard print frame, sat me down and said, "Let's go over what you're eligible for." She clicked through a screen. "Parents' income?" "None," I said flatly. They cut me off. "Are you listed on any life insurance plans or college savings?" "I don't know." She looked up. "We can check." I gave her my info. She tapped, typed, waited. Then her eyes narrowed. "Huh, your father, Clyde Ashbourne, right?" I nodded. "He had a policy through his employer. You were listed until 3 months before your 18th birthday." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your name was removed. No contingent beneficiary listed after. The file was finalized right before he changed jobs." I swallowed. "So they scrubbed me out." She didn't respond right away, just nodded, slowly. "You're not listed on anything else," she added softly. "Not college accounts, not trust funds, not even emergency contacts." That night, I sat in my car under a flickering streetlight. The blanket I'd bought for $3 at Goodwill was wrapped around my knees. I had exactly $27 in tips folded in my pocket. I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. No one was coming. No one was fighting for me. No one even had to lie about why I wasn't around anymore, because no one was asking. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased the paper trail, scrubbed me clean like I'd never existed. And I realized, maybe that was always the point. I remembered Mom, Laureen, telling people I was low maintenance. Translation, I didn't ask for anything. I stayed out of the way. I didn't need much. She'd used that as a compliment. Now I saw it as a warning. They knew I wouldn't fight back. They counted on it. I pressed my hand against the window. The glass was cold. I didn't cry. I'd learned not to waste water on people who pretended I was invisible. But I made a decision. If I survived this, if I ever got out of that parking lot, out of those damn dish gloves, out of that car that smelled like grease and spilled Coke and loneliness, I wasn't just going to live. I was going to make a life so big, so undeniable, they'd have to squint to pretend I never existed. They could keep their legacy. I was going to build mine. Trent was feeding Milo mashed banana when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I didn't rush to check it. That kind of vibration, short, sharp, usually meant a spam message or some promotional thing I hadn't unsubscribed from. But something in the pit of my stomach tugged. And when I saw the sender, I froze. Hi, sweetheart. How have you been all these years? No name, just a number I didn't recognize. But I knew that voice, even in text. It had rhythm, like someone used to being heard, not questioned. Lorene. I sat down at the table, my heart suddenly too loud in my chest. 16 years. Not a word. No calls. No apology. And now, this? I stared at the message so long the screen dimmed. When I tapped it back to life, another message had arrived. We'd love to meet our grandson. My hands clenched. I looked at Milo, his cheeks sticky with fruit, and my body turned to stone. Then a third. Don't keep him from his family. That's not fair to him. Fair? I almost laughed. Trent noticed my face and tilted his head. You okay? I handed him the phone. He read, then looked up with the same face he uses when the dishwasher breaks. Calm, but calculating. She wants access, not a relationship. Don't let her in. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Not yet. My fingers were shaking too badly. I stepped outside, walked barefoot onto the porch, and sat down on the swing Trent had built last spring. The wind carried the scent of lemon blossoms. It should have been calming. Instead, I felt like I'd swallowed fire. They didn't say sorry, didn't acknowledge the years they carved out of me like I was a rot they had to cut off, didn't ask what I'd been through, didn't ask if I was okay, just demanded, like it was owed. I typed one sentence back. You had 18 years to act like parents. You gave that up the day you disappeared. Then I blocked the number. It felt final, but it wasn't. Because 2 days later, Trent got a call from his mom in Mesa. Clyde was asking about you, she said. Said he was hoping to reconnect. Trent narrowed his eyes at me when he hung up. You think Berta gave them your number? I hadn't spoken to her in years. Not since Milo was born. She hadn't reached out, hadn't sent a card, hadn't even liked a baby photo on Facebook. But somehow, they'd found me. I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Marla, she said, a little too chipper. Wow, it's been forever. I need to ask you something. Did you give my number to Lorene? Silence. I don't think so. No, I don't think I ever had your new number, did I? I didn't believe her. It was the same tone she'd used when I was 9 and asked if she was the one who told Lorene I'd broken the planter on the porch. The same hesitating, dodging way she answered when she had known, and just didn't want to be responsible for what came next. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just said, if you didn't, then someone did, and they've already started pushing. Another long pause. They're your family, Marla. No, I said, voice calm but razor-edged. They used to be. That night, while Trent was folding laundry and Milo was fast asleep, I sat in our bedroom with the lights low and scrolled through old voicemails. None from them, of course. But hearing other people's voices, my co-workers, my friend Ellen, the pediatric nurse, reminded me of something important. This life I built didn't have their fingerprints on it. It was mine. They didn't get to show up now, waving the grandparents' card like it earned them entry. Still, my chest stayed tight the rest of the evening. A low hum of panic under my ribs, like I was waiting for the next shoe to drop. It came the next morning. Different number. Same entitlement. The message was short. The courts recognize grandparents' rights. You don't want to do this the hard way. No hello, no name. Just a warning dressed up like a favor. I showed it to Trent. He set his coffee down slowly. Well, he said, his voice steady. Guess we're going to find out how far they're willing to push. I nodded, but deep down, I already knew. 3 days passed before the next message came in. This time, it didn't come with guilt or fake sweetness. It came with a signature. If you don't let us see our grandson, we'll take legal steps. You have been warned. Preston Gill, attorney at law. My throat tightened. Trent was upstairs bathing Milo, and I sat on the edge of the couch rereading it like it might disappear if I blinked long enough. But it didn't. Instead, the words only grew bolder, like they'd been waiting, lurking, ready to strike once they thought I was too tired to fight. They were suing me for grandparental visitation rights. I looked up the name, Preston Gill, found his website in 5 seconds, big smile, red tie, testimonials that read like threats. He got me my rights when my daughter cut me off from my grandson, and no parent has the right to erase blood ties. He wasn't just any lawyer, He was their weapon. I felt the heat rise under my skin. Not panic this time, just fury. They weren't trying to rebuild. They were trying to bulldoze. When Trent came downstairs, towel drying Milo's hair, I handed him the phone. He read the message in silence, then handed it back with a single sentence. So they've gone there. I nodded. It's not just texts now. He sat beside me and pulled Milo into his lap. Then we do it right. We don't panic. We build our case. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't help the tremor in my voice. What if the court sides with them? They won't, he said firmly. They abandoned you. You've got everything documented. This isn't a gray area. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Janine, his mom. She picked up immediately. Marla, I was just about to call you, she said. I think you should hear this. She forwarded me a voicemail she'd received from Lorene 2 nights ago. It was staticky, but clear enough. She's forcing our hand. Lorene's voice crackled through the recording. If she won't open the door, we'll force it through court. Clyde's got a lawyer. He knows what he's doing. We're not just going to sit back and be erased. I stared at the wall. It wasn't even about Milo. It was about control. Pride. They didn't want connection. They wanted power. So I called a lawyer, Greta Vaughn. I'd met her years ago at a parenting seminar through work, and I remembered she specialized in family rights cases. Her assistant picked up on the second ring and scheduled me for a consult the next day. The office was tucked inside a brown brick complex off Speedway. No frills, no polished marble, just a calm, measured space that smelled faintly of old books and eucalyptus. Greta had a warmth to her, calm eyes, gray streaks in her ponytail, and a tone that felt like both comfort and warning. She let me talk. I told her everything. The house, the trip, the erasure, the years of silence, the sudden return. She didn't interrupt, just took notes, asked for screenshots, voicemails, any documented timeline. When I finished, she sat back and folded her hands. You have a solid case, she said. Arizona law allows grandparents to request visitation, but only in certain conditions, and they've never even met your son. They're saying I'm keeping him from his blood family. She raised an eyebrow. You're his real family. They lost that right when they walked away from you. I nodded. They won't stop. They don't see this as wrong. They think I'm punishing them. Greta leaned forward. This isn't about punishment, it's about protection. That night, Trent and I sat at the kitchen table while Milo slept upstairs, his baby monitor purring softly beside us. I handed over the court summons I'd received earlier that afternoon. Trent read it, jaw tense. I didn't cry, I didn't fall apart. Instead, I pulled out a notebook and started writing. He looked at me. What are you doing? I'm drafting the statement I'll read in court, I said. Already? If they want to fight, I said, they'll get one. He nodded once and got up to make coffee. I sat there, the hum of the fridge the only sound around me. They thought they could scare me into submission. They forgot who they were dealing with. The next morning started with a knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent. Just 3 soft raps that somehow felt more threatening than a battering ram. Trent opened it while I fed Milo in the high chair. A man in a pressed gray suit handed over a manila envelope and walked away without a word. Trent closed the door slowly and handed it to me. It was real. Inside was the official notice, a formal petition from Clyde and Lorene Ashbourne, filed through Preston Gill, requesting court-ordered visitation rights with our son. They weren't bluffing. Greta had warned me the day before that it could come to this. People like them, she'd said. Don't back down when they're not in control. They escalate. I called her as soon as I read the papers. We met that afternoon in her office again, the same brown-bricked spot off Speedway, where the air always smelled like lavender oil and caffeine. Her brow furrowed as she flipped through the documents. This is textbook Gill, she muttered. Emotionally framed, legally vague, just enough implication to rattle you, but not enough substance to win. She tapped her pen on the desk. We'll bury it in facts. That's when she opened a file her assistant had pulled together the night before, one I hadn't even asked for. Take a look at this. It was a civil lawsuit from 2006. Clyde Ashbourne, my father, had been sued by his employer for misappropriating company funds. A quiet case, settled quickly, but not before he'd liquidated assets to avoid criminal charges. The house, the one they told me they sold because it was time I stood on my own, had been part of that liquidation. It hadn't been about growth, it had been about running. He got off easy, Greta said, because he paid it back fast, but he did it by selling everything. I felt my stomach twist. All that guilt they'd fed me for being too soft, too ungrateful, all while they were hiding their own disgrace under a coat of parental tough love. That's what the trip was, I said quietly. A smokescreen. She nodded. They sent you away so they could make their escape without facing you. I leaned back, eyes burning. And now they want to act like I'm the one stealing family? We got to work. Every message, every voicemail, every forgotten birthday, every email Lorene had sent Janine that dripped with control and passive aggression. Greta logged and time-stamped everything. Her assistant created folders labeled Abandonment Timeline, Recorded Harassment, Financial Motivation. Janine even forwarded one final voicemail she'd received just 2 days ago. She doesn't get to decide what kind of family she has. That's our job. I played that one 3 times. Let it sear into memory like a scar. That was the nail in the coffin, and Greta knew it. They'll say they just want a relationship with Milo, she said. But this proves it's about domination, not love. It was nearly 6 p.m. when I got home. Trent had dinner ready, something simple, comforting. Roasted chicken and rice, and a side of roasted broccoli Milo smeared across the tray more than he ate. I didn't say much at first, just watched them. Father and son. Real family. Not the kind written in legalese or fabricated for courtrooms. After dinner, I sat down at the dining table again. Same spot, same hum of the fridge in the background. But this time, it wasn't fear guiding my hand. It was fire. Greta filed the counter motion the next morning. Harassment, invasion of privacy, emotional manipulation, violation of parental boundaries, and, what made my stomach knot and unclench all at once, the financial motive behind their original disappearance. The abandonment hadn't just been cruel, it had been calculated. She made sure the court saw it, every last shred of it. That night, as Trent rocked Milo to sleep, I sat outside on the back steps, the Arizona air warm on my skin, cicadas humming in the trees. I wasn't scared anymore. I was focused. This wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about proving they never deserved to call themselves my parents. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the sun. I didn't bother with makeup, just tied my hair back in a low bun, slipped into a black blazer that still had the dry cleaner tag on it, and buttoned my shirt to the top. I needed to look like someone who had nothing to hide. Because I didn't. Trent poured me coffee without a word. Milo was still asleep upstairs. For a brief moment, I let myself watch him, our son, breathing peacefully in the baby monitor's tiny screen, the child they once discarded me for daring to have without their blessing. By 8:45, we were parked outside the Pima County Family Court. The building was glass and concrete, modern, cold. Greta met us on the steps, folder in hand, lips pressed tight. She didn't offer small talk, just nodded, held the door, and we walked in. Security, sign in, waiting room. When they called our case, I felt my legs move before my mind caught up. Inside the courtroom, they were already seated. Clyde wore a navy sport coat. Lorene was in pale pink, like she thought soft colors would undo years of silence. Their lawyer, Preston Gill, had silver hair and a slick voice. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Lorene gave me a small wave, tentative, like we were running into each other at a grocery store and not about to fight over my child in front of a judge. I didn't wave back. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a calm voice, called us to order. Preston went first. He talked about aging grandparents and the tragedy of estrangement, about a daughter who misunderstood boundaries and missed opportunities for healing. He even pulled out a baby photo of Milo that had been scraped from a Facebook post I made years ago before I went private. She has weaponized distance, he said, and now seeks to punish her parents for the difficult choices they made during her adolescence. He framed my abandonment like a mutual divorce, and for a moment I watched the judge tilt her head, scribble notes, and my stomach turned. Then Greta stood. She didn't raise her voice. She just pressed play. Lorene's voice filled the courtroom. She doesn't get to decide what kind of family she has. That's our job. A murmur rippled through the room. Even the bailiff looked sideways. Greta turned to the judge. This is not about love. This is control masquerading as concern. Then came the paper trail. Text messages, screenshots, court filings, the lawsuit against Clyde, the financial motive, the timeline, and finally, the voicemails, the threats, the gaslighting. Lorene's face cracked. Clyde looked down at the table, hands folded tight. Then the moment we didn't expect. Under cross-examination, Greta asked Lorene, "Why now, after nearly 2 decades?" Lorene hesitated. We wanted to reconnect, for the child's sake." Greta, "The child's or the family names?" Lorene blinked. "We always hoped the baby would be a boy, someone who could carry the Ashbourne name." The silence that followed felt like the world had hit pause. Greta stepped forward. "So you weren't seeking a relationship, you were seeking a legacy." Preston looked like he might choke. I felt nothing. Not anger, not victory, just a strange, hollow kind of relief. The judge turned to me. "Miss Ashbourne, would you like to speak?" I stood. "I became who I am despite them," I said. "Not because of them." I looked at Clyde, then at Lorene. "I am a mother, a wife, a woman who built a life from the ashes they left behind. This isn't about denying them love. It's about protecting my son from the very pain they once handed me like it was a gift." The judge said she would deliver a written decision in the next 10 days. But no one in that room needed to read it to know the truth. As I stepped out of the courtroom, the desert heat hit my skin like a second breath. And I knew one thing. Their version of me just died, and I wasn't bringing it back. A week after court, the official letter arrived by certified mail. The judge denied their petition. No visitation, no mediation, no second chances. I read it once, then again. It felt anticlimactic, like slamming a door I already knew was locked. Still, a wave of release hit me. I didn't smile, but I exhaled in a way I hadn't in years. Trent read over my shoulder. "So that's it? Legally? Yeah." But it wasn't over. Not really. Because the following Saturday, I got a call from a number I hadn't saved in over a decade. Talia, a distant cousin. More of a name at holiday dinners than a presence in my life. We'd played Barbies once when we were 6. That was the extent of our bond. I hesitated before picking up, but something told me to answer. "Hey," she said. "Weird question. Did you hear what happened at the family thing last night?" "What family thing?" "The reunion, in Phoenix. Aunt Jan threw one of her potluck nightmares again." I almost laughed. Of course no one invited me. Talia didn't wait for me to catch up. "So, Clyde and Lorene were there." I tensed. "I thought they'd gone underground." "They came out swinging," she said. "Literally." "What?" she sighed. "They were going on about Milo, loudly, telling everyone what a blessing he was and how they were finally proud to have a real legacy." You know, classic delusional nonsense. My stomach turned. "And then Aunt Margot, yeah, the one with the new granddaughter, she made some joke about how at least her grandbaby didn't come with a lawsuit." I snorted. Couldn't help it. That's when it exploded. Lorene slapped her. Swear to God, right across the face. While Margot was holding the baby. Jesus. Clyde tried to break it up. Ended up shoving Uncle Ron into a folding table. The police showed up. Ron's pressing charges. I didn't know what to say. Talia filled the silence. "I'm calling you because I think you need to know something." Her voice shifted, lower, uneasy. "You know all that we want a relationship crap they fed the court?" "Yeah. It was never about Milo. Not really. Not emotionally, anyway. They just wanted to beat Margot because her kid had a girl and you had a boy." I blinked. "Come again?" "They wanted to parade a male grandchild around before she could. Lorene even said it, loud enough for half the family to hear. Finally, a real Ashbourne, one that matters. Like the others didn't count." I stared out the window. "And get this," Talia added. "They said it while trying to get a photo printed of Milo to hang next to the old family portraits, like they were rewriting history." My chest was tight again, but this time it wasn't panic. It was rage. Not hot, impulsive rage, cold, structured, historical. They're not going to stop, I said quietly. Talia sighed. Well, they may have just stopped themselves. No one's talking to them now. Aunt Margot's threatening to sue. Uncle Ron's posting the arrest record in the family group chat. They're done. I didn't speak. You okay? She asked. I'm fine, I said. Thanks for the call. I hung up. For a long moment I just stood there. Then I walked into the nursery and picked up Milo. He was babbling, grabbing at my sleeve. He looked up at me and grinned, and just like that, I was grounded again. That night the footage leaked. Someone had filmed the reunion fight. Not the slap, but the aftermath. Laureen yelling, Clyde shoving, a baby screaming, paper plates flying. It made its way through the extended family. Texts started pouring in, from cousins, old neighbors, even my ex-classmate Dana who'd moved to Seattle. Did you see what happened with your parents? You were right all along. Can't believe they had the nerve. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I logged off, because I didn't need their downfall. I didn't need applause. I just needed silence. Greta texted me that same night. Now everyone sees what you've lived through. That matters. But the truth was, I didn't want it to matter to everyone. I wanted it to matter to Milo. Someday. When he asked about my side of the story. And when he did, I'd have more than enough to tell him. Not the drama, not the court. But the fact that I stood my ground when it counted. That I built something better. And that I never let people who abandoned me rewrite what I stood for. As for Clyde and Laureen, they finally lost everything they tried to steal from me, and I didn't even have to raise my voice. It had been 6 months since the courtroom. 6 months since I last heard their names spoken out loud in my home. Since I stood across from 2 people who once called me daughter and watched them unravel under the weight of their own lies. 6 months since I realized that closure isn't always a moment. Sometimes, it's a process that unfolds quietly, like dust settling after a storm. We moved, not out of fear, not to hide, but to breathe. Trent's parents had always talked about Ireland. His mom, Maeve, was born just outside Cork. After everything, when she offered to retire early and help us start over across the Atlantic, we said yes. The change of scenery wasn't magic, but it was something close to peace. Our little house sat on a hill outside the city, green for miles, a sky that looked bigger somehow. Milo's laughter bounced off the stone walls and out across the yard like wind chimes. He started saying words. Mama. Ball. And one day, clear as glass, home. That one made me stop what I was doing, folding laundry in the kitchen, and turn toward him like he'd handed me a gift I didn't know I'd been waiting for. We were building something real, something that didn't require apologies or permission. Clyde and Laureen hadn't reached out since the court denied visitation. No letters, no texts, no lawyers, not even a fake apology through a third party. Just silence. Talia sent me an email once, a forwarded message from a cousin I barely remembered. Apparently, Laureen and Clyde were fined after the reunion brawl. Nothing criminal stuck, but the family blacklist had. Weddings? Not invited. Birthdays? Ignored. Holiday cards? Returned to sender. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like consequence. I didn't celebrate, there was no party, no champagne on the counter or smug posts online. I just made dinner, washed dishes, bathed my son. And one night, while Trent read to Milo, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. Not to mail, just to say what needed saying, without needing a reply. You didn't raise me, you erased me, but I still made it. You thought your absence would crush me, that it would swallow me whole, but it fed me something else entirely, clarity. You can't break what you never bothered to build. I folded it in half, then again, and slid it into the fireplace. Watched the paper curl in the heat. Watched the ink fade into ash. I didn't burn it to forget. I burned it because I remembered. There was something final in that moment. Not angry, not triumphant. Just done. And with it, something in me finally settled. That weekend, we took Milo into town to visit the Saturday market. He held my hand while Trent pushed the stroller. I watched him toddle beside me, wide-eyed at the street musicians and the scent of fresh bread. People nodded to us, smiled. They didn't know my story, didn't need to. Because here I wasn't the girl whose parents disappeared. I wasn't the lawsuit, the legacy, the scandal. I was just a mother, a woman with grocery bags in one hand and her son's fingers in the other. And when we walked home, past rows of blooming hydrangeas and stone fences weathered by time, I felt something I hadn't known how to name until then. Safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because I'd stopped waiting for it. It hit me when I passed the bakery window, catching our reflection in the glass, me, Trent, and Milo. That's the picture they'll never see, and that's okay. They don't get to see this version of me. The version that grew roots in foreign soil, the version that loves without needing permission, the version that healed without their help. They'll never meet Milo. And that's not a punishment, it's protection. Because this life, it's sacred. Built from the wreckage they left behind, yes, but not defined by it. As we turned onto our lane, I glanced down at my son. He looked up at me with chocolate on his chin and trust in his eyes. And I knew. I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. Some wounds leave scars. But scars remind us that healing wasn't just possible. It happened. Sometimes people ask me how I found the strength to keep going. The truth is, I didn't always feel strong. I just refused to let someone else's choices define the rest of my life. Pain isn't a destination, it's a passage. And what you build after that, that's where your story really begins. If you've ever been discarded by the people who were supposed to love you most, I want you to know, you're not broken, you're becoming. Family isn't just blood, it's who shows up, it's who stays, it's who sees you for who you really are, and doesn't walk away when it gets hard. So if you're standing in your own storm right now, I hope this story reminds you, your worth isn't up for negotiation. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who should have protected you? Drop a comment below and tell me your story, or just leave a if this hit home. And if you didn't love this story, I still want to know, what didn't land for you? Where are you watching from? And hey, if this video moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about what family really means, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Because out here, we tell the hard truths and we heal together. See you in the next one.